For those of you, yep, we're live on Restream. We should be coming up here on YouTube real quick. There we go. I will be kind and I will give a heads up to the next person broadcasting here for Awesemo at awesemo.com, especially on the Awesemo YouTube channel, who's not a trained producer because our buddies over at OBS did a little something different. So we're here, not to fear. We have, what is first pitch tonight, Terry? 8:15, I think? 8:07?
Yeah, something like that. We got time.
8:08.
We've got plenty of time. 8:08. There you go.
We know the pitchers. We haven't seen this matchup recently. However, we know enough about this that we're going to be all set. So thank you everybody for joining. Appreciate that. We'll get some stuff set up here, and we'll get going. Wow, almost 150 people. Thank you for spending a little bit of a Friday night with us. We will be here on Saturday as well. Taking you up for Live Before Lock. Tomorrow on Saturday, we actually have 6 hours of Awesemo YouTube content. So I highly, highly recommend, please, that you click that subscribe button. For most of you watching on your computer, it's going to be down in the lower right. Once you click on subscribe, that's going to disappear. All this does, if you choose to hit the notification bell on any of the shows, or you can do it globally, we'll tell you when we go live. So tomorrow we have 3 football shows, including college football and a college sports betting show. We have our show, we have NASCAR, and we have MMA. The MMA starts early tomorrow. I want to say it's 4 o'clock. It's a pay-per-view event. It's over there on Fight Island. It's Justin Gaethje and I forget the other person, but I haven't done my analysis yet for that. And then Sunday, of course, kicking off at 10 a.m. We take you all the way up through lock for NFL, and then there is NASCAR, but that's why we're doing the show on Saturday, so you'll be ready for that. And then there will be NFL Live Before Lock for Sunday Night Football. That is now the Seattle Seahawks at Arizona Cardinals. They changed that around because I forget which team was going to be up there, Terry, but they were worried about some COVID tests. Oh, I've got Terry muted. Wait.
I had me muted. There was an ambulance going by outside before. My bad.
Sometimes when I do this whole reset thing, I lose other settings. So I'm like, crap. I do know how to fix that, though, if that happens again.
Sorry to mess with you there. My bad. Yeah, I completely forget what I was about to start talking about when we got the mute button there. But looks like people are definitely asking us to start hitting some baseball. I think we're,
let's do it.
Nobody cares about UFC anymore.
Yeah, no UFC, none of that stuff. We have plenty of time, so let's.
It's not my joke, but I still think that it's a shame that UFC called it Fight Island and not UFC, like SEAC. Isn't that such a better name than Fight Island? UFC.
That's kind of like the Oneaters.
It is kind of like the Oneaters. I like that.
It's a great idea until it's in practice.
I forget his
For
joke.
those
that
of you
was
that didn't get that thing you do, the Wonders. Initially, they spelled it Wonders, but they getting called the Oneaters. So
the Oneaters.
All right.
As in what happened to the Oneaters?
Yeah. Last thing, 35 years ago, Back to the Future came out.
Nice. There you go. And we are further from Back to the Future than Marty was from 1955.
Frightening. That's frightening. 2 pitchers tonight. We have a roof closed. We are in Texas. We've got Walker Buehler going against Charlie Morton. We know on FanDuel pitchers don't matter. You don't have to play them. Your 5 players are all hitters. On DK, you can play, well, I guess technically you could play 6 pitchers if you like, because you can put in the relief pitchers. That might be a bit extreme, especially since some of the relievers are only going 1 inning, and they also do not get any points for saves over there on DraftKings. But the one trick that we've learned, and Terry helped me see the light, is that when you just upload the projections for any player that's already in the player pool, even though they're not visible on Fantasy Cruncher, once you hit refresh on your browser, they will then appear. You do have to check them. But now you've got your relieving core in there as needed. So let's start off. We've got, for the 2 pitchers, we have Walker Buehler, who has completed 6 innings twice since the restart. 1 was in his last start. And then we have Charlie Morton, who has not completed 6 innings. Well, I guess he did, September 25th. wait for the punchline, 2019. It's been over a year. So we want to be careful with what we're doing here. We suspect that we'll see some potential quick hooks. Everything's tied up now. The jitters are off. There's no more screwing around. And if I remember correctly, nobody really went super deep yesterday. Of the relievers, even though the Dodgers used a whole passel of them, they still didn't use Julio Urias, and nobody, I don't think, went over 30 pitches. So even in a pinch, they've got guys. So this is not really going to be a situation where we have a tired bullpen by any stretch, which means I think we see mixing and matching in this game the moment that Buehler or Morton start to struggle. But Terry, we got a couple guys that can throw strikes here, which is key. So let's start off with Mr. Buehler.
Definitely a different game overall than we've seen with the bullpens being a big factor with the bullpen, the straight up bullpen game from the Dodgers, and then just not necessarily relying on the depth of a Blake Snell, somebody like that in the early games. So now we're getting two guys that I expect to at least go 5 and change. You mentioned Morton hasn't really been able to get to 6 since last year, or get through 6. And I don't necessarily think he's going to this time either, but he is a reliable starter. So we've got two fairly reliable guys going on the hill. Buehler is definitely my preferred pitcher overall out of these two. For the season, 36 2/3 innings. He had some issues being in and out of the rotation and getting, kind of ramping up slowly. Some of his early starts were very short starts, and then he was injured a little bit toward the end of the season. So he's had, some up and down utilization, but overall 3.93 xFIP to a 3.44 ERA in that stretch, 28.6% strikeout rate, 7.5% walk rate, excellent whiff on his curveball. His fastball is his primary strikeout pitch. 52% of his strikeouts this year came on the fastball, on the four-seamer, 48% last year. Super heavy spin on the pitch, and it really helps set up the rest of his repertoire. 29.2% strikeout against lefties, 27.9 against righties. So he's excellent against both sides of the plate. And the Rays strike out a pretty heavy rate, 26.4%, second in baseball against right-handed pitching. So definitely a lot of strikeouts available for Buehler. I like his upside. I wrote up the over on the 7.5 strikeout prop for him. So I have it very close. I was not comfortable writing that up, but that's where I landed. So it was a great line that Vegas said, I thought, but I took the over.
Interesting. That is one, it's a good line, and two, there are so many things that can happen for nobody wants to root for the under, but there are so many things that can happen that end up leading to the under. So if we go over here, I'll drop the link in chat. This is Awesemo Odds Shopper. That's something we've put together. NFL game capsule pages, I don't know what we call them, but they're amazing. It shows you where the money's coming in, where the line is moved, historical stuff. It's phenomenal. So I'm dropping in the player prop page for baseball here, which is important because we are sponsored by No House Advantage tonight, and they are a player prop site. We'll talk about them in a moment. But if we look over here at Mr. Walker Buehler, it looks like there's essentially it's even on either side for the quote, the money. Minus 118 generally on the under, minus 106 on the over, which means it's really split at 7.5. So what OddsShopper allows you to do is kind of shop not only for the better line, like maybe if Terry thinks it's going to be over 7.5, and he can find one of the books at 6.5, and all of a sudden he says, hey, wait a second, I can get a better deal here. Then he'll look at how much he's paying for it. Now, something like that, maybe like minus 157 on the over, because they're setting the line lower, they're going to make you pay a little more for that. But that's the different things that you can look at. Joey C, I will have to find out, but if you were in Slack chat, you could tag Awesemo, and I bet he could go look at that for you. See what I can do. We'll adjust the we have Buehler showing up at 2.7% in utility. Yeah. We'll get that fixed. Clearly that's wrong. But yeah, I'm kind of at the moment. But anyway, OddsShopper is that by comparison, Charlie Morton 5.5 strikeout rate. I don't think we get that from him. I'm feeling pessimistic today. I
didn't write up the side on Morton, but if I did, I think I would have taken the under. And he's another one. He came up almost exactly on that line for me. and just a little bit of pessimism, a little bit of not trusting Charlie Morton, a little bit of remembering that he's lost 1.5 miles off of his fastball velocity, even though it didn't totally kill him through the season. He figured out how to get by with it. It's still a factor for me. It's something I take into consideration there. And then on top of that, the Dodgers are very, very good at limiting strikeouts against right-handed pitching. They were 20.2% this year, one of the top teams in baseball in the split. I don't have the ranking. They also finished with the best ISO at 240 and a 126 WRC plus. So tougher spot for Charlie, I think, or not tougher. That's a bad thing to say, but very tough spot for Charlie. And especially on that strikeout number, I don't trust him to get there. Bueller's a good example of what you were just saying, just real quick, jumping back to what we offer on OddsShopper. You could see when I wrote it up, the pricing was specifically, it was at plus 113 for that over on the strikeouts on 2 out of the 3 books. And then the other one was at a worse price. So you can shop it around that way and figure out where you're getting the best numbers, so you know where to make your bets. Even if it's the same line everywhere, you might have or the same over under everywhere, you might have a different price to put it at. So that's really, really solid tool there. And then just to throw it out, a couple of the others I wrote up were Austin Meadows or Brendan Lowy hitting a home run. They're both at plus 400. I like both their chances, coming up pretty even in my home run model. And then converse to that one, I had Austin Meadows not getting a hit at plus 115, which I kind of like. Anytime I can take good odds on a hitter not coming through is something I'm going to consider. He's a guy.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just to wrap that around. He's a guy, he's a decent hit tool kind of a guy over his short career so far. But this year he fell to a 205, 296, 371 slash with a 32.9% strikeout rate over his 152 plate appearances. So he hasn't really flashed the hit tool too well this year, taking a little bit of a shot on him not coming through on a hit.
Right now, now I see someone asking who's the best MVP on FanDuel. Well, let me help you out with that, because today's free Awesemo tool is player projections for baseball. So you can check that out. I just dropped the link in chat. Technically, whoever is projected as the highest hitter would be the best player, because we don't have the pricing premium over there on FanDuel. Now, we're splitting hairs because 9 of the guys are probably within 0.5 of each other. So that's getting to be a little bit ridiculous, but it does sort of help you out. Now, I heard before the show that someone was trying to put every batter that's active into one of their lineups as the MVP over on FanDuel. Do you think that's a viable strategy? I would like you to answer that for yourself, because, folks, it is T McB that is trying that strategy tonight. He's playing everyone.
Trying to get everybody into one of those spots. So I'm rolling just a 50 lineup block. I'm not doing the full 150. So it's even taking a bigger bite out of my overall ownership. I don't know that it's a good idea. I don't know specifically. I'm trying a few different things with what I'm doing with some of these showdown slates. Showdown baseball is very wildly unpredictable with the variance in baseball in general, and the positioning available on FanDuel, with the pricing allowing us to put basically anybody together, no price premium for the multiplier spots. I think it makes sense to spread out and try and grab a lot. This might be me overreacting a little bit to what I screwed up the other day in my filter in Excel, which ended up with me getting way too much of a concentrated core around a few guys. So what I was doing in FanDuel, in Cruncher rather, was I was utilizing the stacking tool to limit the gaps between hitters. And then I was trying to get to some of the lineups that had some of the back end hitters. Because what I found in Cruncher, especially when you're building with this, if you run off 300-400 lineups and then you sort, whatever you're sorting by is going to group together a lot of those different lineups on you. And if you're not using any secondary utility to get those groups out so that it's not all concentrated on just a rotation of the same 5 players through the different spots, you're going to end up relying very, very much on one specific core of guys, which I didn't necessarily want to do. I wanted to spread it out a little bit more. So one way I'm trying to do that is through limiting the gaps, so that if I have a 5 hitter, let's say, pop in as the first guy, it's going to limit the ability to play like a 1-hitter, a 5-hitter, and a 9-hitter together. And it's going to kind of string more correlated bats together for me. And it's going to help me spread out to those other guys. And then manually, I went in and I made sure I had at least one lineup with each guy in the MVP spot while also spreading around the star spot, because we do have the 2 multipliers there. So it becomes another level of complex with that. Again, not sure if it's a good idea. Not sure if it's something I would advise anybody to do, but I'm giving it a whirl.
All right, I am going to crunch 4 more, and I will have made my lineups. I'm running 50 on DK. I've done a variety here, so we'll get into the players here, but we've seen them all for the last 3 weeks. But what I have done is I have tried various, we call them onslaughts, but I've gone pitcher with multiple hitters from his team. I've gone pitcher against the other team with only one of his own hitters, so facing 4. I allowed it to go 5. It didn't look like it took anybody for 5. I'm just trying to get a little bit different on that. We've seen in multiple games where the pitcher goes 4 or 5 innings, does just fine, and then the bullpen does get touched up for the runs. So those outcomes do happen. As Terry was saying, literally anything can happen in a 1-game sample size. I see someone kindly pointed out that you said 7 or whatever, under 7 strikeouts for Snell, and he got 9. Well, that's in the range of outcomes, guys.
Of course. Snell's an excellent pitcher. He struck out. I think when I wrote that up, he struck out, 9 twice, 8 once, and 6 once in his 11 starts. He had hit it essentially half the time through the season. It's a toss-up, guys. It's a 1-game baseball slate.
Yeah, and so
I apologize if I blew that call for anybody out there. We're trying.
Yeah, so
that was also directly in line with everything that he was projecting in mean projections for both me and for Alex. I assume for Josh as well. So yeah, I'm not really sweating that one.
Yep, and you run into the same. Well, one, and the Dodgers are not as strikeout heavy as a lot of other teams are as well, and they're putting their very, very, very best hitters in there in these good situations. So a lot's going against them. I see someone is asking, this is where we're coming on with this. Does Morton get to 6 strikeouts? I don't know. The number's 5.5, and I feel like it's going to be the under, because I think there are reasons why he may not pitch it long enough to get there or see enough batters to get there. But in his last few games, 6, 5, 6, 8, 6. So in his last 4 games, he got there. 66 pitches, 96 pitches. I will be shocked if he goes over 80 pitches tonight. 86 pitches, 93 pitches. So that's kind of where we are. But Ben Rasa does say it best, and this is the good stuff to talk through. So we're not talking down to anybody by any stretch here. There are many paths to victories. There are even many more ways to lose. So we are discovering those all the time, especially new ones. But Ben Rasa, has a lot of interesting ways to think about this. So a lot of times on these single game slates, he'll talk about, you don't have to fully fade someone, meaning you take them out of your lineup. Maybe you just don't play them in the captain spot. Maybe you just don't play them on that MVP or that star spot. You still have them as utility, and then you're only losing the fraction of the multiplier of somebody else that has them. So there's a lot of ways to go through these different things and get there. And he is someone with just the iron stones to bet the under more often than not, because when he can find a good spot where he can find someone that might be a little bit hurt, where he can find something where weather could come in and be a factor. He's looking at all these other things. There are so many things that can go wrong for the under to happen. And nobody wants to bet that, but he's been quite successful doing it. If you do it, I don't want to watch the game, because it's like playoff hockey. You're like, oh my God, they have the puck, they might score. And then it's, oh my God, we have the puck, we might score. It's like, I'd rather not watch it. It's exciting. Rather not watch it.
I love playoff hockey.
Yes.
It's the best. To me, as much as I love baseball, playoff hockey is probably the best time period in any sport. It's just amazing. Just so tense and edge of your seat. But that's kind of how I was with the Snell game the other day, honestly. I make these calls, you guys, and I do sweat them, and I feel every one that I get wrong. And believe me, I probably lost more money on that than you did. So whoever you are out there. So yeah, I was sweating that one too. And by the time he had, 4 strikeouts in the first inning, or the first 2 innings, I figured we were probably done for. Yeah. Sometimes you don't get them right, guys.
All right, so let's talk hitters here. First, let's walk through the Dodgers. So Dodgers, veritable all-star team. They have the reigning NL MVP. They have the 2018 AL MVP. on here. The reigning MVP for the NL, batting sixth. That would be Mr. Bellinger there. They've got Jacques Peterson at the bottom of the lineup. You've got Barnes in there tonight. Peterson, always a pinch hit risk when a lefty comes in. I'm just looking at the rest of the lineup and don't really see anybody that's an issue, but they've got AJ Pollock just waiting there, former all-star himself, who's actually very good against righties, not just lefties. So he's someone that once he's in the game, probably not going to come out. So they're going against Charlie Morton. So Morton, over his last 853 righty-righty matchups, so same-handed hitters, he is allowing just 0.6 home runs per nine, 24% strikeout rate. Against lefties, he's allowing a little bit more power, 1.1 home runs per nine, but he's striking out 34.3% of lefties. These are regular season numbers. They include this season, but not this playoffs. But so not the easiest of matchups, Terry. We know Betts has stolen base upside. We know Seager finally healthy after 1.5 lost seasons. Rookie of the year, because the Dodgers get all the hardware. You've got Turner, who a phenomenal matchup in righty-righty. You've got Muncy, claimed off the waiver heap from Oakland, and here he is batting cleanup in the middle of a World Series. It's just embarrassment of riches. Since he joined the Dodgers, his last 618 at bats in lefty-righty matchups, he has a 250 ISO, 357 isolated power, and he's walking 17.5% of the time. He's got a good eye. Lead us through the Dodger All-Stars. Let's just go with that.
And they really are. I mean, top to bottom, this is anytime you can have AJ Pollock hitting 7th regularly in your lineup, you're pretty darn good. It's ridiculous that they were able to get Muncy from the A's that way off of waivers. I mean, he talk about a perfect Oakland A's hitter. I do not understand how they missed on him, but kudos to the Dodgers for picking him up and realizing what he is. Out of all those hitters, I think those are most of the guys that are in play. You mentioned Bellinger and Mookie, obviously the two big MVPs. The ownership is not overly tragic as far as the captain ownership on DK for any of these guys. Jock is drawing, I think, as of my last update, the most at 4.8% on the Dodgers side of things. So I think you can get away with a lot as far as rostering any one of those big time hitters from the Dodgers in your captain spot and just start your builds there. And you're already getting different from a lot of the field that's going to be building with Buehler as the captain. And you're maintaining a pretty good upside. The moment one of these guys hits a home run, they're right there neck and neck with what the pitchers are doing. So I think that's definitely a good approach to it. You mentioned Barnes, and Adam brought something up on this morning's show, which is interesting, and it makes a lot of sense, is with Barnes catching and Smith DHing, you're much less likely to see them pinch hit for Barnes. You're more likely because they're going to lose their DH early. So they're not going to want to do that. So we're going to see probably a full complement of plate appearances for Barnes. They might do it late, in the last couple innings if they need to, and then they can pivot when, not really sweat losing the DH, but they're certainly not likely to do it early. So I think if anybody's getting pinch hit for here, it's going to be Jock, and it's probably going to be with AJ Pollock, who you mentioned, which I think is, if you're looking for a pinch hitter play, that's probably one of your better pinch hitter plays overall, and definitely from this team.
All right, so I'm looking at this. So I want to point this out because I haven't heard back from Alex, but let's talk just for a second the what seems to potentially be off as the ownership percentage here for Morton, or pardon me, for Buehler, and let's kind of logic our way through it. So if we look at the combined ownership on DraftKings for the captain and for the utility spot for Buehler, it's 40. Well, let's just call it 44%. If we look at that same number for Morton, it's 41%. So Morton's just happens to be allocated out. We also have Walker Buehler at 41% in the captain spot. That all maths out because none of the hitters are really more than 2 or 3%. I'm sorry, outside of Austin Meadows. And then we already have Morton at 20%. So these numbers are correct. What it's saying is that's where logically more people tonight for floor, likely projected points, and all of that, the heavy play is to go with Walker Buehler in this spot because we already know he has let's look at the Vegas odds now, 7.5 strikeouts, as we mentioned. So everything's pointing to him being, if you're going to play one of the pitchers in captain, you only can play one, or probably MVP, you can only play one. Sorry, Captain. Keep getting confused here. And then now I'm thinking of Captain Morgan. Captain. Great commercial. I don't like Captain Morgan, but that was a great commercial. So it's all kind of working out. So this is where you start to use the leverage of different things. So if this is where we think it's going to land, and if you watch the strategy shows, Adam and Josh have done a good job of explaining why it's better. Why more often than not it's going to be better to play, and Alex is doing an update. He just messaged me why it's better to do the pitchers and the captain is they have the most projectable raw points total. You really need someone to get like a home run and a 2-run double to match a good pitching performance. How often is that going to happen? So we'll know in a second where it's going to be, but that could be how it maths out. Tonight, I'm going less heavy on the pitchers. Game 1, I went very, very heavy on the pitchers. Tonight, not so much. I think I've got them each at about 35% combined between captain and utility, whereas I had them each 70% combined in Game 1. And that was Kershaw, and I'm thinking Glasnow. So these are just different ways of looking at it. So I see someone saying, this game is making my head hurt. Yes, because literally anything can happen. And you can hardly, so let's...
It's a one-game baseball slate, and this should not exist.
Right, exactly. And why haven't we focused on this before? Well, because normally right now we've got basketball. I was telling my wife, I'm like, I don't ever remember doing one game. When did we do that? I'm like, oh, because we were doing basketball normally instead of World Series single-game baseball. Well, here we are. So we got something to do. So that kind of walks through the Dodgers side of things. And for those of you that were worried we were not going to have enough time, we've got 22 minutes left, and we only have to talk about the Rays hitters. So, again, we'll circle back, loop in, we'll answer some questions, and we'll do some other stuff. We'll talk about no house advantage. But just real quickly here with Buehler, so I guess we can say his career, because this goes back to the beginning of 2018. So in his last 720 righty-lefty matchups, he's allowing 0.9 home runs per 9, striking out at 30% with a 6.7% walk rate. Those are all pretty darn good. Against righties, 28% strikeout rate, just a 5.2% walk rate, allowing 1.1 home runs per 9. So that's he's a phenomenal pitcher. He's kind of the guy in play and the guy you want to build around. But that doesn't mean he can't get run out by this power-laden Tampa Bay Rays team early, because it's baseball and weird stuff happens. Talk about the Rays here.
Yeah, I think you touched on it. Buehler is a guy who, through his career, has been good at limiting the home run ball for the most part. This year, he did struggle a little bit, but we're talking about a 36 2/3 inning sample size again, which I mentioned earlier. So the home run per 9 was a career high at 1.72, but that's really only 7 home runs in that 36 2/3 inning. So, I mean, it's not something I'm really worried about. Minor blip in a very small sample. I think he's an excellent option. I agree that if you were building one lineup and you want the best probability of cashing, put him in your captain spot on DK. I mean, he's the guy who is most likely to rack up a big score. He's more likely to rack up a big score than any of the hitters. So that's your path to the most frequent success, is playing him. And by success in that case, we're defining success as cashing. It might not necessarily be your most frequent path to a solo GPP win. In that case, I think you're going to be more likely to get there by rostering one of the hitters with a good home run probability, who not many of these people are on in the captain spot, but that's to try and get there solo. And that's another thing that Adam brought up this morning. We talk a lot about getting to individual lineups, trying to win GPPs solo. For a lot of people out there, cashing is enough. For a lot of people out there, splitting one of these 100K pots 5 ways would be life-changing. So don't necessarily get too hung up on the idea of making a 100% unique lineup unless you're playing a very specific strategy. Adam did a great job of laying that out this morning, and it made a lot of sense. So if you're chasing and you can afford to just chase wins, then you can really, really focus in and think about it exclusively that way. But there's not really the need to sacrifice completely upside in some of these good builds just in the name of getting to plays that are going to come in very infrequently and not have people on them. So with that in mind, I think we can pivot over to some of these raised bats and start looking at some of them like you asked about. Now that I've talked lineups.
Well, one update, and then we'll get there because we do have a Walker Buehler ownership update.
Oh, good.
So I'm where did he go? Sorry, I sorted now. I was looking at the that was riveting, guys. Riveting, I know.
It's definitely gone up. I can guarantee that.
So he has tripled his ownership in the utility spot. He is now at 8%. Wow. And I'm not making light of this. He's 38% in the captain spot. Morton is 16, so he's double and a little bit more. Meadows is 8. Jock Peterson is 6. So the rest behind the paywall, you guys can check that out if you are Awesemo Premium. But tonight, the free content is the projections, not the ownership. But I did want to point that out for anybody listening and busy making lineups and doing other stuff, but having us on in the background, that it's now updated, not a dramatic change. And where I say not a dramatic change, especially when we're putting on 10 to 50% randomness on our teams, we're trying to bracket in players, we're saying 2 uniques, we're saying all of this, it's directionally correct where it is because, as Terry said, this baseball's not designed for one game slates, especially if you're not going to include relievers or saves, or pardon me, relievers getting it like a slightly goose, maybe 1.5 points per strikeout, or 50% more than whatever it would be. There'd be other ways they could make this more interesting, but it's not great.
They're not there yet.
Yes.
So we want to jump into some of these raised bats?
Yes. Let me.
So just off the top, I mentioned 2 of the guys that are more likely on the entire board to hit a home run than anybody else are the 2 lefties up at the top of the Rays lineup for me, Meadows and Lowy, or Lowy, or however we're pronouncing that guy's name. I've said it like 14 different ways this year. So I think those 2 guys on the Rays and then overall for the full slate are the best home run options we've got. But we might see Meadows come out of the lineup for a pinch hitter at some point if they go to a lefty, especially if they go to a Urias, who you mentioned did not get action, and he's a fresh arm coming out of the pen. So we might see him get a couple of innings tonight, which would most likely pull Meadows out of this lineup. They might stick a Hunter Renfroe, somebody like that, in there for him. I think that the other lefties are safer. Kiermaier is going to be in there for his defense. Lowy handles lefty pitching fairly well. So if they go to a lefty, I think those guys are going to be in the lineup. So if you're looking for a tiebreak between Meadows and Lowy, I think we'd go to that and probably, skip Meadows, take the ownership discount and take the probability of being in the game for the entire game out of that. Going down through the rest of the lineup, we've got G-Man Choi. Also, some possibility of being pinch hit for, certainly. You get like a Yandy Diaz stuck in there in the right situation. Choi's got good upside for the long ball as well. And then I like playing some mix of, some Manny Margot in there, some Maros Arena. Of course, he's been red hot. We've talked a couple times about him not necessarily being this superstar that he seemed like over the last couple of weeks. He's going to settle into being maybe a little over league average player, a 20 home run type guy, 15 steals, 20 steals, something like that. He is not, I think they said the second coming of Mike Trout. I'll just echo that for an easy comp. He is not that. That's what they were using on the morning show. So on this slate, I can definitely play him in 0.2% owned captain for a guy who we've seen some home run upside, some stolen base upside from. I think that makes some sense to get to over there. And then if you start considering what you were just talking about with the Buehler ownership, if we're going to see him basically, what was that, 46% of the time total, I think 38.
So new news from Alex. He says there's a bug, and I'm just saying this because I was citing it on the show and I want full transparency for this, but Alex right now is messaging with the premium subscribers in Slack and explaining what to do. So just saying, guys, get behind the paywall. He says those numbers look like they're reversed and he can't figure out what the issue is, but it should be closer to 30-ish% in the utility spot for Buehler. So basically where Morton and Buehler should be a lot more tied in both. But again, that's kind of what we've seen the whole time here. But as we've watched, that, in my honest opinion, in one game baseball, this shouldn't really drive what you're doing, because it just takes one home run from the 9 hitter, and all of a sudden somebody's off to the races, or you don't have the double dong, or you don't have the bases clearing double, and it's a 4-2 game tonight. You're done.
If it had been at 8% in reality in the util spot, I was about to make an argument for playing him in the util spot. Yeah. And playing and rotating through some home run hitters in your captain spot. But since it's not going to be at 8%, it's going to be at like 36%. 100% agree with you that it's not something to worry about there. So we can scratch what I was about to dive into. Random home run guys in this Rays lineup. You've got a Mike Zunino pulling exactly no ownership in the DK captain spot. He's a guy that we've seen with 2 home run upside in the past. It's unlikely. He's much more likely to strike out a few times and go 0 for 5. But he's going to be in there. He's going to see a full complement of plate appearances. And if nobody's putting him in the captain spot, I can justify it, for a limited share of my lineups. It's not something I want to go overboard with. But any guy like that, and you heard me say earlier that I'm rotating through basically everybody on the FanDuel MVP, I'm not sure I would do it the same way with the price bump on the captain MVP and the captain spot on DK, but I would still want to get to a good spread of these guys who are, a decent shot to hit a home run. And then maybe I would stop short of, rostering the Chris Taylors of the world and some of those guys. Not that he can't hit a home run, but he's less likely to. So that would kind of be my focus with the bats on both teams is, kind of zero in on some of those home run guys. If you can add a guy with home run and stolen base upside, like a Mookie, like an Arosarena, like maybe even a Manny Margot, then you're really talking about something that can add up quick in that captain spot for you.
All right, so people kind of looking for and I'm saying this not in a bad way, the guessing game on relievers. Okay, everybody had yesterday off. That resets the clocks. That means nobody's pitched in the last 48 hours. So literally anybody's in play at this point. I would suspect that we would be looking at Julio Urias coming in as the guy if it's going to be a high leverage situation and just something happens with Buehler. If they're down, they're not going to waste him. He has the potential to be the opener of one of these games. If he comes in, I only foresee 2 to 3 innings with him. If he starts one of the games, I see 3. Maybe he comes out for the 4th inning, but he's not going to finish it. So you're not rolling into gold there. Kenley Jansen, they're not going to use unless it's a tie ball game or he's going for the save. Dylan Floro has pitched each of the last 2, as has Victor Gonzalez, as has Joe Kelly. That would now put all of them in line to be 3 for 4. When you've got Pedro Baez, who has not pitched since Tuesday, as for my opinion, it's going to be him or Urias who come in if it's a close game when that time happens. On the other side, it's the Rays. I don't even think they know what they're going to. But the only people that nobody's overworked. Nobody's pitched 3 and 4. So the most anybody's going to be is Nick Anderson, pitched 19 pitches 48 hours ago. Diego Castillo had 3. Pete Fairbanks had 23, and Aaron Loop had 11. None of those are actionable items. So I would say you have everybody fresh right now. This is, if you play video games, and pretty much everybody but me does, you're at full health. Do they even say that anymore? I'm trying to think of there was a Gauntlet. That was the game we used to play with the Valkyrie and the Elf.
Oh, man, I love Gauntlet. The arcade version.
The arcade version. 4-player game in the arcade, God, yeah.
That was the best. Have you ever heard of anybody beating that game? I'm relatively sure it just never ends. Like, at a certain point, you just got overwhelmed and you couldn't get through it.
There is a final screener, because I remember my cousin was really good at it, and he was a few years older than me, and he would go play like $20 worth of quarters, which like would be now sitting down and playing like $150 because this was, like 1982 or whatever it was, 84. I wasn't driving. I had to ride my bike to go watch it. So,
but you also didn't have every video game you could ever want.
Yes.
Something like this in your hands at all the time. You had to pump quarters into these things.
That is true.
Valkyrie
needs food. That's all I remember.
I was always the archer.
All right. So relievers. You dive into this. I guess Pete Fairbanks, Diego Castillo, Nick Anderson would be the 3 I would vote for from Tampa Bay.
Yeah, those are basically the guys I've been kind of going to each time, and I think it makes sense. Again, you mentioned nobody pitched yesterday. These are guys who are used to getting a decent amount of utilization and a decent amount of innings on their arms, and coming in, a couple days in a row. So they're not going to have any issue pitching after an off day. Any one of those guys could get in the game. Tampa, I think, is much more going to be game situation wise. They're probably hoping for 5 and change out of Charlie, and they're gonna mix and match. They're gonna try and get one out of Castillo, one out of Anderson, something like that. I think on the Dodgers side, they might be the more likely team to be game planning to bring Urias in specifically to get some of these lefties out of the lineup and kind of throw the Rays off. The Rays are very, very mix and match and very platoon split conscious. So I think just doing that, with the idea that if I put him in, they're going to toss Meadows and maybe Choi out of this lineup, and I'm going to get Hunter Renfroe, who then I can match up with in his subsequent plate appearance with a righty and get a very strong plate split. I think that really starts to make some sense. So you could probably see Urias go for 2, maybe 3. It's more likely going to be 2 than it is to be 3. I think it's 3 if Buehler struggles a little bit. And then you get into the guys that you mentioned on the back end, the high leverage arms, a Gratterall, a Jensen, Blake Trenian, I think didn't pitch the other day, so he should be fresh. So I think any of these guys are in play, but it's definitely much more of a focus game on the starting pitching by the same token. These are 2 guys that are relatively reliable to give us at least 5 and at least 5 pretty good innings with a decent amount of strikeouts each. So it's going to be difficult for any of these relievers to really put up much of a relevant score. If anybody, if we get 3 hitters from this game that put up 10s or 8s, it's going to be difficult for the relievers to catch them. So I think the play is more on the starter side today. I think it's less important to get into the bullpens today.
All right, and that kind of we'll hit on that because the question time. You got 7 minutes left. So ask those, tag me in Slack chat so it pops up on my screen, or we'll get you in YouTube chat here. I see someone saying, is it better to play a relief pitcher than Kevin Kiermaier? In my opinion, no. Even though Kiermaier will be one of the more, he'll be on half the lineups on DK, most likely, a function of his price, and he doesn't get pitch hit for. But he's going to see 4 at-bats. So I would rather roll the dice with him getting 4 at-bats than trying to figure out which reliever might come in, which reliever is probably going to be a difference maker, need to have a clean inning with 2, if not 3 strikeouts. How many times have we seen that this series? Not many. So valid thought, yes, it could happen. Is it the good play? As Ben says, you've got to be right twice. You almost have to be right 3 times. Kiermaier has to do nothing. You have to choose the reliever, and then they've got to come in because the DK 1 clean inning with 1 strikeout is, what is that, 4 points? 5 points? It's not very much.
Yeah, it's not much. So, yeah, and that's it. You've got to nail the guy who's actually going to get used, and then he's got to actually succeed, and he's got to outscore Kiermaier. So I'd be much more inclined, if I was looking to get away from Kiermaier, to go to a different bat that's lower owned. If you're trying to escape the ownership, go with something that's a similar play, but significantly less owned. So, maybe you look instead of Kiermaier, I don't have the ownership up in front of me. Instead of Kiermaier, maybe if we're talking about util ownership, you start looking down to, like Margot's kind of owned. I mean, G-Man Choi is only 22%. He's less than half the ownership of a Kiermaier. I think Choi's probably got more upside overall. You're paying more for him, but he's got tremendous power. He's in a good side of the split. So yeah, he's more likely to get pinch hit for, and you're paying a significantly higher price for him, but you pay up to be different and you get away from the Kiermaier popularity that way. If you want to switch over to the other team, I mean, you've got Jock, he's drawing similar ownership, similarly low price, but then there's like an Austin Barnes at 4,800, 29% ownership. So there are things that you can do to get away from the ownership without having to go all the way down to the limited likelihood of a relief pitcher coming through for you.
All right. Let me see. Oh, thank you, Eric. Team Eric. Eric Patron says 4.25 points for 1 inning and a strikeout.
There you go.
So there you go. Thank you for putting that in there. Is EMac having pizza and Diet Pepsi and baseball on a Friday? No, already ate dinner, and it's water tonight because I'd like to go to bed, get up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed so I can write some NFL articles because I'm traveling this weekend. So got to get all that stuff done tomorrow for that. Let's see. Jacques is a high. Yep, that's answering a question for them. Okay, he's stuck between Smith and Will Smith and Anderson, or Bellinger and Aaron Loop. I'm assuming it's Anderson, the pitcher.
Will Smith and Anderson, or Bellinger and Loop?
Yeah, so batter reliever.
Yeah.
Reigning MVP. I'm sorry, you have to.
Yeah, I like the Bellinger side better. I wouldn't want to guess at the pitcher side of it. So just going by the bats, I like the Bellinger side better. Better home run mark for me, better hitter in general, I think. Better ownership on both sides, I think. So yeah, that would probably be my choice.
All right, 400 of you left. I didn't pester you with ads, but I do want to mention No House Advantage. Hit that like button. No House Advantage is the prop wagering site. We are not going against the house, therefore no house advantage. We are playing against each other. Depending on the contest, you have 50 to 60 questions that you can choose from. You rank 5 of them, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 with confidence. You choose the whatever they're setting for the player prop. So for tonight, if they were saying, it is Walker Buehler with 6.5 strikeouts, and you think it's going to be more, then bet 5 on the more. If you're not sure where it's going to be, pick another one. Maybe don't bet very much, or don't put that much confidence on it, etc. You play head-to-head, 50-50s, GPPs. So all the formats we're used to playing, and playing against other gamers, against each other. Beat your friends, not the house. No house advantage. Promo code Awesemo gets you a $20 match with your first deposit.
Nice.
Not bad at all.
It's interesting over there too. If you're using Odds Shopper while you're making your decisions over there, you can really pick off some interesting edge. Each of the last few days, the props that we talked about for the strikeouts were a full strikeout lower on NHA than they were in at the books for Odds Shopper. So you can start hitting those with extreme confidence if you see something like that. For either the over or the under, depending on which way you go. So definitely pull up Odds Shopper while you're using No House Advantage.
All right, and then please do subscribe to the channel. We appreciate it. Helps us a lot. Gets us up in a lot more eyeballs popping up on other people's suggested video feeds. And then we've got 6 hours of shows tomorrow. We've got, let's get it up here, starting at the early hour of 9 a.m. We're actually going to end up with a dual stream here, but from 9 to 10:15 is the MMA UFC Live Before Lock. At 9:45 to 11 a.m., it's going to be Ben Rasa and Matt Gajewski looking at college football, both DFS and wagering, and they spend a lot of the time on DFS, which is very, very helpful, and they're answering all sorts of good questions in there. We have at 11, you've got Greg Ehrenberg and Jeff Ulrich going over the final Week 7 strategy look. At noon, we have the NASCAR strategy. You got Phil in there dropping his knowledge. At 2:30, this is the treat. This is on the contrary. Laffy Alex, and the special guest this week is RBX88. He is the first 3-time millionaire winner in DFS. So it will be interesting to see what he has going on. And then the best show, because they saved the best for last, 7:15, same as tonight. 7:15 is the DFS Live Before Lock MLB version with me and Terry. So we've got you covered there. It's gonna be fun. And I did want to point out one last thing for those of you still listening. MMA locks tomorrow at 11 a.m. Do not get caught watching the paint dry on that one, because we're over on Fight Island, and you don't want to miss out on this one. It's pay-per-view with Justin Gaethje again.
And DK Live just sent out an update that started with the word Mookie and made me panic 1 minute before lock, but it turns out it's related to UFC. Mookie Alexander listed his favorite fighters, whoever Mookie Alexander is. Don't send that out 1 minute before baseball lock, DK. Come on.
That feels like a troll move.
I think so.
And now I've got to go look and see who Gaethje's fighting, because it's making me... Khabib. How did I not know that? Khabib. So... yeah, we got to see those guys during the not against, I think it was against each other, but the pandemic time. So we're circling, we're like now coming back around to fighters I've seen, which I couldn't have said prior to pandemic, but there we are. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate you all being here. Give us a happy birthday shout out before I...
let's get a happy birthday for everybody out there. Hit the thumbs up out there for Jordan Klein, our producer, who always kills it for us on all the shows that you guys love. It's his birthday. I hope EMac's okay on the other side as we're getting out here. But Jordan wasn't with us today. EMac produced the show and got us through some technical difficulties early on. But happy birthday out there, Jordan, wherever you are.
All right, gotta whack my chest. Get rid of that frog. All right, gamers. With that,